What's up, beautiful people? Happy Thursday. On today's episode, we're back, first of all, with a live stream with a couple of new tricks, as you can see, and more to be revealed in a second. But today, we're going to be talking about how to run a successful business. I think you're going to be super pumped for our guest today. And we're going to talk about these 8 core concepts. The 8 core concepts you need to know to run a successful business. There's going to be a short presentation. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to claim your creative power through entrepreneurship. This channel is all about that. So when I was reading this, this is good. This is going to be good for all of us. And potentially how to move from your side hustle to your full-time hustle. Ooh. Okay, so my next guest, everybody. He's a college dropout, self-taught entrepreneur, a family man, a best-selling author of the book Create and Orchestrate. He's a co-founder, venture capitalist, public speaker, a black belt in Hapkido, and he's currently residing Nashville, Tennessee. Everybody, please help me welcome Marcus Whitney.
Yeah,
Woo!
Marcus!
You guys, you're missing the beat. Woo! Okay, we're back.
Awesome.
There we are. So now you can hear some other voices, and we're trying to bring some of the energy and some of the love. Joining me today is a very select group of people I trust from the Pro family. They'll be listening in, potentially feeding me some questions. But Marcus, welcome to the show.
Chris, thank you for having me. And the Pro family is a lot of love. It's a lot of good energy.
We're rolling out the red carpet treatment for you today. So I don't want to talk too much. Now, I have a bunch of questions, but I really want to get into the presentation. We know people drop off really quickly if we don't give them the value right up front. Yeah. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll be listening in and potentially asking you a few questions while you're going through your deck.
Thank you so much, man. All right. So everyone, welcome. I'm here to talk to you about the 8 things you have to know in order to run a successful business. This is a channel for creatives. I'm a creative, got this big Create shirt on. And so I think that this will be very useful for you, because I think for creatives, we like to do what we like to do, not necessarily what we have to do. And this is a little bit about like what we have to do if we want to run a successful business. So Chris gave you a couple of just pointers about me. What I think is important here: college dropout, I'm self-taught. So everything I'm going to talk to you about today is stuff I basically came up with through experience, not in a classroom. Probably the highlights of my career, I was a director of technology and a partner at Email Marketing. I am a founding partner of Jumpstart Health Investors. It's a healthcare venture capital firm. And I co-founded and I'm a minority owner of Nashville Soccer Club, which is a Major League Soccer team. What's important about that is that there are 3 very different types of businesses. And so what I'm about to teach you works across all of these types of businesses and every kind of business that's out there, including the one you're trying to work on. So I've started a lot of businesses because I had an idea that I was passionate about. And I was just like, I want to do this. I want to bring this thing into the world. And even though I gave you 3 examples of things that went well, I've failed over and over because of what I did not know. This is like super, super important. Maybe like you, I jumped into a lot of these books, right? So the 4 Steps to Epiphany by Steve Blank, all about customer development, business model generation, the lean startup. Who hasn't heard of the lean startup or hasn't read
Right.
Right? These are incredible, incredible books. They help you to figure out how to like get product market fit or how to think through a business and be able to tell somebody else about it. But they don't tell you what you have to do day in and day out to run the business every day, right? Not just like figure out if it's a real business you should go after. And the other thing they don't tell me is like, what is the priority? If I'm getting a good night's sleep, 8 hours a day, there's only 16 hours. I got family, I got to eat, I got to get exercise in. I don't have unlimited time. So what is my priority on a day-to-day basis? So in this presentation, we're going to go through 3 key things that you're going to learn. 1, you're going to learn a universal template for any business that you're thinking of starting. It's a template. You'll be able to plug things in. 2, you're going to understand the priorities that every successful business runs on. And I do mean every one. And 3, you're going to find your strong points and weak points quickly so that you can fill gaps and avoid failure. So I'm a software developer who became an entrepreneur. And that's important to this because the way I think about things is as a software developer. I don't know that anyone else out there can relate, but software developers are always like taking things and putting it in the software developer frame of mind. And so software developers have developed something that always will cover all the needed aspects of building and maintaining applications because we're lazy. We don't like to do the same thing over and over again. So we're like, okay, I do this thing in the last 3 apps. I need to like write something that'll do it every single time. And these things have evolved over time into what's called frameworks. So I'm sure you've heard of Ruby on Rails, or maybe React or Express. Maybe you've used a framework. WordPress is even a framework, right? You don't need to kind of rewrite the blog every single time. And what's awesome about frameworks is they handle the things that you need every single time that you're creating a new application, and they let you focus on what's unique about your application, right? So that's why people like to have frameworks. So let me tell you how frameworks are created. There is a set of rules about frameworks that you would only know if you've actually like tried to build a framework, and I've done this before. So the first thing is that frameworks are made up of concepts and contexts. Concepts and contexts, okay? So in an application framework for software, here are some of the concepts. Authentication. Every app needs authentication. Navigation. I got to get from one place to another. Sessions. When you're in the application, you do things, you want to like keep up with the things that have happened. Security. You always need security. Data storage. These are common concepts. But then furthermore, you need these concepts to be presented in a certain context. So one context might be a social networking context. Another one might be a financial application. So the context really matters as well. Frameworks have an order of operations. So there is a first thing that happens. Before I even let you have access to anything, I need to check and make sure you're authenticated. So that comes first, right? So authentication is always super important. Security, always super important. So there's an order. Everything can't happen at the same time. There is an order of operations. And the final thing is that these concepts are connected to each other logically. There's a way that data flows in and out of these different concepts in an application. So these are things I knew as a software developer about app frameworks. Finally, the simpler, the better, right? You don't want it to be incomplete, but you want it to be very, very simple. So I just got to the point where I was tired of failing and I wanted to stop failing. And I was learning a new lesson through every failure. And I was like, how can I make a framework that I can build any business on? And I just needed to use the same rules of app framework, but just make it for business. So I needed concepts and I needed context. I needed an order of operations, and I needed to connect these concepts logically. And that is where I came up with, as Chris said earlier, the 8 core concepts. Now, these are really, really straightforward. There's no magic to this. A lot of times when you do these presentations, they'll try to tell you like, come up with 3 things. Well, 3 wouldn't be enough. Okay. So they're 8, but they're simple enough that you can remember them. And so I'm just going to go forth and tell you these 8 things you have to know. Okay. Here they are: leadership, finance, operations, growth, product, service, sales, and marketing. That's it. Every single business has these 8 core concepts within them. And every successful business is led by a team who understands these concepts. Okay? Now, I'm going to run through them really, really quickly and then leave some time for us to talk through them. First, leadership. Leadership is about creating a culture in which a business can thrive. So things that leaders do, they create vision and values. They focus on management. They focus on communication. Communication is basically the #1 role of leadership. And this is true whether you're in a one-person business and you're just sort of running it yourself. You need to be really clear about what you're doing. You need to manage your own time, and you need to communicate with the partners that you're working with. Because even in a one-person business, you're going to have different vendors or you're going to still have to communicate. So leadership is always about creating the culture, whether you're a one-person business or a 10,000-person business. Finance. You have to ensure the sustainability of the business. I know a lot of us like to say product first, or everything is about marketing, or service, take care of the customer. Look, if you don't make a profit, you don't have a business. You have a fun piece of art. So finance is super, super important. Revenue, expenses, profit, assets, liabilities, capital, taxes. Taxes are not like at all like a normal thing. You know what I mean? It's like an entirely different thing. But trust me, if you don't understand your taxes, you could do everything else right and completely go out of business. So this is super, super important. Operations. Operations are about minimizing the risk in your business. What form of company do you set up as? Sole proprietor, LLC, corporation? There's all different types of forms of a business. Insurance. Do you have adequate insurance coverage? Contracts. Are your contracts drafted correctly? Human resources. Are you employing people? If you are, you got a lot of risk on your hands. So you got to be able to handle that correctly. Process, technology, measurement. That's everything that's inside of operations. And it's all ultimately about minimizing risk. Growth, optimizing the business. Growth is about the understanding that when you enter the market is not static. The market is dynamic. It's always changing. What you have today that works really well might be a totally saturated market full of knockoff copycats in 2 months, right? Or something drastic can change in the market and you have to really shift. So you can never get lazy. Growth doesn't mean you have to like make more money all the time, but you do have to think about how to optimize your business. You have to be thinking about reinvestment. You have to think about developing a point of view. You have to be thinking about innovation, and you have to accept that changes happen and drive the change as opposed to being impacted by the change. Product. So there's so much out there about product. Silicon Valley has really taken this word product and made it to mean a bazillion different things that I don't think it was ever intended to mean. Product is quite simply a predictable unit of value. It is the thing that your customer understands they're getting for you. They want it to be predictable when they get it for you, and they're going to exchange money for it. That's all a product is. But the discipline of product is about research, development, design, production, quality control, pricing, and more things. So you have to understand product. Service is about maximizing customer satisfaction. I think some people think that if you're in a consulting business, that's a service-based business. I would say it's not. I would say most people who think that they're in a service-based business in terms of what they're selling miss the fact that they have to deliver a predictable unit of value. I think no matter what business you're in, you have to deliver service because things are going to go wrong. So you have to fix those things. You have to be willing to stand up to some kind of guarantee. And you have to understand that when you have a customer, that's a relationship. And so just like you would not invest in a relationship with a loved one or a family member or a friend, you have to invest in that customer relationship as well. And that's what the service concept is all about. Sales. You have to generate revenue. This should be the simplest thing ever. What's your point of sale? What's your method of sale? What's your model for selling? That's all sales is. It's just about generating revenue. And then finally, marketing, which is my favorite one, which is about identifying, understanding, and generating demand. What is your brand? What is your reach? What is the content that you're going to use? What are the channels that you're going to use to try to reach your customers? So that's marketing. So those are the contexts. The concepts, okay? The context of those are basically, I organize them into 2 different categories. One is inside of the building. So you got 4 of these concepts that really mostly belong inside of the building with your team, with your company. Leadership, finance, operations, and growth, okay? Those are all the things that you really, on a day-to-day basis, when you're talking to your coworkers, your colleagues, your boss or whatever, this is what you're talking about. You're talking about the leadership, the finance, the operations, and the growth. The outside of the building is the customer-focused stuff. So that's the product, the service, the sales, and the marketing. That's everything around the customer experience. It's not that you're not dealing with it in the company, but the focus is almost entirely on the customer as opposed to an employee or a boss. Now, there is an order of operations, and there's a way to connect these concepts logically. And so I'm going to walk you through the priority order of these concepts. But I want to first say that the lower the priority, the more comprehensive. And this is a concept kind of from computer science called inheritance. So it basically means that the highest concept, which is leadership, surprise, basically can be found in all of the other concepts, okay? You can find it in all of the other concepts. So they're not separate. They're all actually embedded in one another in this order I'm about to present to you. Leadership is at the top. Finance is absolutely the second most important thing. And this is where a lot of creatives get it wrong. Because we love our idea and we love to create and we love to get out there with the customer, we don't pay attention to our P&L. We don't pay attention to our taxes, and we get totally screwed up. And we look up in 2 years and we're like, I thought I was having fun, but now I'm broke. I've spent all my savings. And it's because we didn't really understand how important the finance aspect was to our business. Operations, growth. So you can see I've prioritized everything internal, everything inside takes precedent over the customer focused stuff. And that's because you can't actually deliver the stuff to the customer if your house isn't in order. Okay. So you've got to have that leadership, that finance, that operation, and that growth mindset really, really locked in so that you can create a great product, so that you can serve your customer well, so that those things can lead to great sales, and so that your marketing is really, really effective. I've talked about the inheritance. That means it includes all of the properties and the methods of the other concepts. And so this is just me explicitly saying finance includes leadership, operations includes leadership and finance, and so forth and so on. Marketing, which is the last one, is the most comprehensive. That's why people are seeing marketing officers being risen up to the top of the company right next to the CEO in so many leading companies. It's because if you're in marketing, you have to understand every aspect of the business, right? Because you're out there in the market communicating with the customers before they become customers. And you have to be able to talk about every aspect of the business in a way that's authentic and true, so that when they come in, you haven't oversold, you haven't over-delivered. You've effectively communicated the reality, and hopefully everything beyond what you've said actually stands up and meets what the customer is expecting of you. So, this slide didn't work out right, but 100% of successful businesses use the 8 core concepts. You are probably great at some of the concepts and not so great at others because you're just a human. But you have to understand all of the core concepts. That's just something you can't ever delegate. This is what a team might look like behind the 8 core concepts. So obviously leadership will be the CEO, the board, the entire management team. Finance, everyone would imagine the CFO, the bookkeeper, the tax accountant. Operations, COO, who's your lawyer, who's your insurance broker, project manager, your technology, information and technology folks, your tech partner, your human resources team, all of that fits inside of operations. In growth, who's your chief strategist, who's your head of innovation, you have analysts or consultants. They will all sort of fit into the growth space, helping you think about what's next. Product, chief product officer, product development team, service, your chief customer officer, and on and on. So you can see how over time you sort of, when you start a business, you're the whole thing. But if you're successful, you're going to start to backfill different people. This is kind of what the people you're going to need on your team look like. So start figuring out what areas you need to get out of your bucket as quickly as possible, because either you don't love them or you're just not good at them. And this is what a fully built out team around the core concepts looks like. So many entrepreneurs fail because they don't know these concepts. I know I did over and over and over again. I remember the very first time that I had 10 employees and I didn't know that I actually had to pay payroll taxes on them. So like I was like writing checks out of a checkbook every week. And then at the end of the quarter, I got this really big, nasty email from my accountant that was like, dude, you're way in the hole right now because you're supposed to be paying something like an extra 15% on top of what you've written for the payroll tax for these employees, and you've been spending it on computers and other like really nice culture things for them. Meanwhile, you're going to run afoul of the state. So you have to know these things. You have to know these things, or inadvertently you will kill your own company because you just didn't know them. So just don't be that entrepreneur. Take the time to learn the core concepts. I wrote about them in my book, Create and Orchestrate. It was an Amazon #1 bestseller. There's a lot of narrative in here. This book is mostly about my failures. I talk about a couple of successes at the end, but the spine of the book that has no narrative is a full explanation of the 8 core concepts and much more. So that's it. And Chris, I'll hand it back to you and we can chop it up a little bit.
All right, awesome. Thank you for doing that. I'm watching the comments online and they're like, whoa, this is straight fire. It's just facts, dropping it. There's a lot there to unpack for sure. So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You sound like somebody who's been through a business school, but I know that you're a college dropout and you even waited tables. So how does one get from there to here? But more specifically, what did you study in school and why did you stop going to school?
Yeah. So I started studying architecture. And I stopped going because I was into hip hop and smoking weed. So it was 1993. It was the golden era of hip hop, and
Yep.
Nas and Biggie and Wu-Tang were popping, and that's what I was about, man. I was rapping and rolling blunts. So yeah, that's the reality. And I like went and tried to like live that life for a while, and then man, life happens to you. It didn't work out, and the next thing I knew, I had a small family that was being developed. I had a 1-year-old. My wife at the time was pregnant. And I found myself in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was like waiting tables. You know what I mean? Like life comes at
Mm-hmm.
you fast when you're young and you're having fun. And so at that point, I realized I needed to really rethink my life. And how I started that was I taught myself uh, coding. I taught myself how to be a software developer. That was my first like self-taught, mission. And over 8 months,
Yeah.
I taught myself code, and I got my first coding job, which was a massive socioeconomic shift for me. And I did that for 7 years. 4 of those years was at this company, Emma Email Marketing, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a startup. It was kind of like a rocket ship, and that's where I got the entrepreneurial bug.
Mm. So many different questions here. So Nashville is not exactly the hip hop center of the universe. What brings you to Nashville of all places that you can land? I believe you grew up in New York, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in
Yeah.
Brooklyn. I went to UVA, and then I went back to Brooklyn, and then I went down to Atlanta, and that's where my family started. And the reason why we ended up in Nashville was because my wife at the time, she spent her high school years in Nashville, and her best friend lived here. So,
I see.
like we just took a flyer and got in the car. When you're young, you just, those kind of things are enough to make a decision like that.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So you get into coding, which isn't like architecture, and it seems really super technical, and you're getting into this. What made you drawn to coding, and what made you so good at it?
So two things. One, I was
Mm-hmm.
super lucky. My uncle was a programmer at IBM, and when I was like 9 or 10 years old for Christmas, he gave me this IBM PC Junior, which like back then, computers didn't do anything that you didn't program them to do. They were so weak.
Right.
You know, so I learned like basic programming. And it's one of those things where when you learn something like that young, it kind of like gets baked into you, and you at least understand it conceptually, and you feel like you have a level of confidence that you can take it on. The other thing was I moved to Nashville in the back half of 2000, and so it was the dot-com boom. It was, I didn't know it because I wasn't in New York. I wasn't in the middle of it. It was kind of like the end of it. But I just remember seeing these high school kids riding around on skateboards in offices making $100,000, and I was like,
Right.
if they're doing that, I can do that, right? So legit, man, I got my job like right when the bust happened. so
When the
I
bus happened. Okay.
I slipped in the door with
Okay.
one of the last companies to go public before the bust, but they already had the money, and were building the company, and so I was able to retain my job.
Mm, I see. So it's kind of interesting. I believe that when I was checking out your profile, like you became the chief architect, which I mean, you studied architecture of Emma Email Marketing, which I know of. And did you make? If this is too personal, let me know. Is this how you made your wealth? Like you were there at the right time and you
So
got shares or options
yeah,
or things like that?
yeah. I was the fifth or sixth employee, depending on how you slice it,
Wow.
and I earned 7.5% equity in the company. Uh,
Holy cow.
yeah, yeah, big chunk.
Okay.
And dude, like I didn't even know what equity was. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, the founder of Emma, Clint Smith, wrote the foreword to my book. He's I still look up to him, and he hasn't run a company since Emma. He's like been, on vacation with his family ever since he left that company. But I learned so much from him and Will Weaver, the
Hmm.
co-founders of the company, and they were just incredible. They gave the early employees pretty big slugs of equity, and I was able to sell that back to the company to start my first business.
Wow. Okay. So what year is this that you're selling the stock back to the company? When?
2007.
2007. Okay. All right. So is this the beginning of you launching a lot of these businesses and some of which you said it didn't work out because you weren't aware of these eight core concepts?
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. Yeah, because the thing is, like, I was so close to the founders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I rose from just like a programmer to chief architect and head of technology and a partner, and I had a team under me and all this other kind of stuff. I thought I understood how to run a business, but there's a big difference between being like a head of technology at a company, or a head of marketing, or a head of sales, or a head of anything, and like
Mm-hmm.
actually being the boss.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge difference. So when I got out in the world and I started realizing, oh, I never dealt with this HR stuff. Oh, I start realizing all these things that I had no idea about. I never paid the taxes for the company. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like all these things, I never had to put down the budget and make really hard decisions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that those realities honestly slapped me in the face for 10 years, Chris. I mean, I was making really bad. I don't
I
make
see.
really bad mistakes anymore, but I was making really bad mistakes. I would say from 2007 through 2015. You know,
Okay.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and just through sheer grit and determination, I sort of didn't totally succumb to the failures. But I had a good exit with a tech marketing company that I built. I was able to build this venture capital firm, which worked out well. But look, I had a lot of partnerships dissolve over that period of time. A lot of ideas that went up bust. I poured money into dumb things, and it was always because I lacked an understanding of the fundamental structures of a business, where my priorities needed to be, and how to make decisions. Like, the thing that's important about the concepts is that you you make decisions about product based on your understanding of the finance. So if your
Mm-hmm.
understanding of the finance is poor, you make bad product decisions. You know what I mean?
That's probably a wake up call for a lot of people that are tuning in right now because we don't like finances. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to disclose with you when you're going through the 8 core things. It's like, oh, shoot. I don't know how many of these things I actually have mastery over or am that interested in. And maybe I paid the price over the years. But I want to just also put in context because when I learned about you in terms of you're a minority owner and a co-founder of the Major League Soccer team in Nashville. You are a co-founder of a venture capital fund that invests in innovative health technologies. I was thinking, okay, Marcus has money because that doesn't come from just grinding. We usually don't hit those kinds of revenue streams where we have a surplus of capital. And I've seemed to notice a pattern is people that are in tech that exit out with a healthy chunk. They become venture capitalists themselves. They want to make their money work for them. You spent that money for a good portion of like 10 years or so building up businesses and probably just burning through a lot of it at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I make money, I reinvest it into ventures. So like you know, I have I have my home with my wife, and we have emergency funds and things like that. But I'm still really in the game, like
Mm-hmm.
in my businesses. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I mean, look, I self-published my book. I mean,
Right.
that I had to invest in that. So I'm still, because ultimately I believe this kind of goes back to claiming your creative power through entrepreneurship. I really do believe entrepreneurship is the way at the end of the day, and I don't believe it's easy, and I also know that it's very competitive, and so it's like anything else. It's a craft. You have to get really good at it, and you get good at it by like putting in the reps. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So yeah, I mean, I've had enough money over the course of my career that I could have bought really nice cars or things like that, but I've just always reinvested it into businesses. That's just always been, and
Right.
some of it's been lost, but some of it has appreciated, really nicely. And
Right.
yeah.
Okay, a couple of things, just really quickly, by your estimation, how much money did you burn in these failures from 2007 and from whenever you started to figure out the game? I want to point this out because the game of entrepreneurship is one filled with risk, and a lot of times we just look at the success. We forget about the hard work, the failures, and the money that you actually just wind up burning to educate yourself. So, by your estimation, do you kind of have a ballpark figure?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking a really interesting question, and I think it's probably hard for me to exactly say, and
Mm-hmm.
it also, there's a little bit of attribution here because there was one business that I was in from 2009 to 2014 that it wasn't like I wasn't the only person in the business, but it was a venture backed business, and it didn't work, and it burned millions of dollars. Um,
Wow.
so, depending on how you slice it, probably the range is something like
Mm-hmm.
$500,000 if it's 100% like personally attributed
Mm-hmm.
to 15 million.
Of other people's money, including yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's the price. I mean, that's the game that you play as a venture capitalist, right? Like now you're a venture capitalist, and when you look at investing, what percentage of success are you considering? Like, because people don't understand too, there's a lot of guessing, a lot of putting money in the wrong horse, but you only need one of them to work out. What's the percentage in which you think people are guessing as a venture capitalist?
Different firms have different philosophies on this. So
Mm-hmm.
because I'm an entrepreneur, my partner Vic is also really an entrepreneur at heart. one of our principles is we shoot for hit rate, which means we're looking for as many wins as possible.
Of course.
Reason is not just about the money, because actually there's a case to be made that you shouldn't care about that. You should care about multiples and not care about hit rate. The reason why we care about hit rate is because there are people inside of these companies, and these failures are really, really hard. And we don't want to be a part of an unnecessary failure because they're hard. So when we invest, we intend to, like, we expect every company we put money into to be successful. That's irrational, but we say it in the spirit of, we're not going to put money into a company we don't believe in, and we're going to do everything we can as investors to try to help that entrepreneur be as successful as they possibly can. So that's our hit rate mantra. We're 6 years in, so that's a little early for a venture firm to kind of tell. But this year we've had 3 really strong realization events, which you would call it, where we've been able to get money back and return it to our investors. Our internal rate of return on those investments has been way above industry average. We're in the healthcare industry, and I think that's an industry that's only going to be more valuable from a acquisitions perspective as we go forward. Obviously, everyone's realizing how important healthcare is this year. So, we're doing really well. Things are going really well. We're continuing to raise funds. We're having exits at a really healthy, good clip. Founders are making lots of money from these events. So right now it's a good time. But I'll say this in all honesty, our very first year of investments was kind of a bust because we didn't really understand what we were doing. So 2015, that class, it will be, I would imagine, the least successful of like all the investments we've made. Our 2016 class is out of this world. So good.
Sure. That was like your freshman year, or your rookie year. It's fine. Okay, now you have a very interesting story of highs and lows, and we'll get into that if time permits. But I want to swing the conversation back to kind of where we started at the beginning of the show. I said one of your ideas is to say, like, we want to reclaim our creative power through entrepreneurship, and there are a lot of people who are watching who are probably solo practitioners. How do they know if they're an entrepreneur? What does that even mean? Can you help give us maybe some kind of internal questions that we can ask ourselves if entrepreneurship is right for us?
Yeah. So, man, you just asked sort of the $1 million question. I wrote my book because I believe less that an entrepreneur is something that you're born as and more as an activity that you can teach yourself to do. That's how I see it. I do believe there's a certain personality type that is predisposed to that activity. And I call that personality group ambitious creative rebels. So like people who like have strong sense of self-belief, like to create, they get energized by creating, and they're kind of always bucking against the status quo. If that combination resonates with you, then entrepreneurship is likely to be a really great set of activities for you. But entrepreneurship is really something that you do. It's an action at the end of the day. And the 8 core concepts are the foundation of that action. You're running a business. If you're an entrepreneur, you run a business. So, how well you run that business, to me, is going to be based on, your pure talent. Like anything else, any activity, there is an element of talent that plays into it. But there's also like just how long do you keep doing it? I think a lot of people don't think about entrepreneurship as a career. When you start, you're not as good as you're going to be if you stick with it, right? So I'm a career entrepreneur. I'm better than I've ever been, and God willing, I'll be much better than I am right now in 5 years because I'm in this for the sport. It's I want to win, and winning means making money and having a successful business. But I'm in it for the competitiveness of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said 3 key words here, so let's dissect them. Ambitious, creative, rebel. So ambitious means I think you want more than what you have and you're willing to go for it.
Yep.
Right? Rebel means I think you're going to take some chances and go against the flow and look for new things. I think I get that.
Yep.
Why did you choose the word creative, and what does creative mean to you? Because I think our audience thinks of that word maybe a little bit differently than you. Can you help shed some light on that?
Yeah. So I am on this mission as somebody who was a software developer, right? So if you're a software developer, here's what that means. That means you're often around quote unquote creatives. Like you're definitely going to be around graphic designers a lot. And just like product has been sort of bastardized by Silicon Valley, creative has also been co-opted to mean something that only a subset of people can relate to. When in reality, like creative is just the default human mode. Everything we use and everything we see that was not created by nature was created by somebody, right? And so this is what we do. We create money, we create language, we create music, we create food, we create technology, this is what we do. And you can be in operations, and look, if you're a lawyer and you come up with this really cool term, that was a creative act.
Mm.
You don't have to be really great with a pen or a pencil to be a creative. You don't have to be a painter or a photographer to be a creative. Um, Anything that you do that is bringing something new to the world, something novel to the world, something innovative, that's creative. So to me, I'm always trying to like broaden people's understanding of the creative power they have within them. It's a universal power. We all have it. We just have different ways of expressing it and different passions through which we're likely to express it.
Awesome. I think that's a really great inclusive definition of what it means to be a creative. So we're bringing everybody into the conversation. Now I want to add to that in a little bit, but before I do, Marcus, can you stop to share? The people on the Zoom call, they want to see your face, and
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
think your screen share is yeah. So while you're doing that, now in Marty Neumeier's book, I forget who he quoted, but they use the word design and not creative, but okay. So anyone is a designer if you devise a solution that moves us from an existing situation to a preferred one. So I believe those definitions, what you just shared with us, overlaps. Okay, we're looking to move from the way things are to the way things should be. All right, now Rodrigo, I know you're like checking your phone right now. I can see your face. I think he has a question for you, so we're gonna bring Rodrigo on and have him ask this question, and then I'm gonna get to Rachel Black in 1 second. You ready, Rodrigo?
I am ready. Actually, two questions. We got to look up what I wrote here.
Okay,
Uh, where was it?
I know
Sorry,
where it
Chris.
is. I could see it if you want me to ask it for you.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah. Yeah, he said Rodrigo's question was, Marcus, if you would start a new business today, knowing what you know, what would it be?
Would it be? And that's a fantastic question. So I can tell you the space that I'm honestly, I am starting a new business right now. I'm always starting a new business. It's like what I'm always doing. Um, I'm really fascinated right now around media. I think if you look at everything that Chris has done, it's just incredible. I'm spending a lot of time thinking about the newsletter space. I think the newsletter space is a fantastic one-person business. I'm really excited about one-person businesses, right? Where the risk is sort of low. You can start for free. Like that's the crazy thing right now is you legitimately can start a business completely for free. And that's not like hyperbole. I mean, literally, you could go down the concepts. You could like go get Wave apps for free to handle your accounting and your invoicing, literally not pay anything. You could like do all your stuff with a Gmail account and with all the Google apps, you can find some way to sort of send out your newsletter for free. It's like you run all this stuff for free. So I would say any business that I can completely run for free and where it's just about me putting in time and effort and it's a disruption of media where I have to sort of earn every single customer by executing great content that is something I'm currently very, very passionate about because I think there's very sticky results in it that are portable that you get to take with you into other ventures that you're doing, which is really, really cool. And I feel like that is where things are definitely going right now. So that's the space I'm personally really passionate about.
Hmm. It sounds like you're trying to leverage your knowledge, skill, talent, and using widely available, publicly accessible platforms like social media or the G Suite or whatever it is that you're talking about, and figuring out a way to make something more efficient. It was really interesting at the beginning of our conversation. You talked about your the rules of coding and developing software, and I thought you were going to make this whole one-on-one map just to make an analogy I've not heard before. It's pretty close. You're super analytical in the way that you think and very clear and focused. Like, what do you attribute that to? Is it just those early days playing with that IBM PC Junior, or something else? Was it something in your parents, your schooling, your upbringing that like people ask me this question all the time. Why are you so analytical? So I'm gonna throw it to you because I never know how to answer it.
So the period of time that I worked at Emma was really, really pivotal for me.
Hmm.
I would say two things. One, having to teach myself code was difficult because you have to understand in 2000, 2001, code was a very different thing than it is today. So there were no iPhones, there was no cloud computing. And when I say cloud, I mean like there was no Amazon Web Services. Like if you were going to do something, you you had to buy a server and like go to a data house, a data storage place and like stick it in the rack and all that kind of stuff. And so when I was learning code and I was learning internet code, I had to learn TCP/IP and HTTP. I don't mean to be speaking over anybody's head, but I had to learn the fundamentals of how the internet works. Okay. And so I think that just kicked me into this like, when I learn things, I want to understand everything that's underneath it, right? I want to understand the core principles of it. So I think that's a big part of it. The other thing I'll say is when I was at Emma, um, we had to totally reverse engineer the business into software. Ruby on Rails didn't exist yet in 2003. So there was no great framework yet. So we literally wrote our own framework. So I had to go through the process of thinking about what are the consistent concepts that are going to be in this application. I had to create my own Ruby on Rails that never, nobody's ever heard of it. It never like got to that level, but I had to go through that exercise. And so after that, I started to just sort of see things as frameworks. You know what I mean? I started to always sort of see what are the systems underneath this thing that I see that I'm experiencing. I never want to just sit at the surface level. I want to understand what is the underlying system, because then I can engineer it I can engineer and create with it as opposed to being a consumer of it. I basically hate being a consumer. You know what I mean?
Hmm. When you were describing that, I just see you as the black Neo with dreads or whatever, and the code is like streaming in front of you, and there's something about you where you were talking about before. You're really into hip hop, and that was your creative expression. So there's this creative, lyrical, imaginative, illogical side to you, and then there's this super logical coder guy, and you being able to, I guess, traverse in the real world and in the construct of the matrix, which makes you really, really powerful.
Yeah, I that much. Well, thank you. And at a certain point, you have to stop and just sort of say, given certain talents, everyone has their own set of talents that make them really powerful. I would just say, lean into your strengths and bet on yourself. You know what I mean? There's only one you, and you have your own set of superpowers. I think that when I moved to Nashville and I was waiting tables 6.5 days a week, we were living in a week-to-week motel. Okay. And I didn't know anyone in town. And like the clock was ticking, the second kid was going to be born. And my back was totally against the wall. You know what I mean? Like my back was totally against the wall. And I feel like everyone can relate to a moment in your life where you didn't have the luxury to think about anything superfluous. Like you could only
Hmm.
think of what was going to work, and so
Hmm.
that exercise and that moment, and then the success I saw from that, going from waiting tables to getting like that $45,000 a year job and benefits, and it totally changing my life. I just learned the value of playing to my strengths and not dealing with all the extraneous stuff. So, um, I just think that's the thing. I know I have my own strengths, but I'm no better than anyone else. It's just I've had this 20-year window because of my back being against the wall of playing to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I want to get into the mindset here a little bit. It's easy to feel that pressure and collapse, like you're waiting tables and you're doing basically a skillless job, like, and that's why people don't get paid a lot doing that, because you're easily replaceable. I think David C. Baker, who I think who introduced us to one another, he's like the rate of interchangeability, the how easy it is for somebody to swap you out with another person, really determines how valuable you can be to the marketplace. Not the only way, but just one way. So you're there, and I've done like low skill labor jobs, which I just feel like I want to die, because
Yeah.
the human mind and the human spirit is made for more than just moving a thing from position A to position B, and it's kind of what you're doing. So how is it that you can say, okay, 6.5 days a week, you must be toast at the end of that week, thinking like And this is what a lot of people do. I just need to relax. I want to drink some beer. I want to watch some TV because I need to prepare for the next week. What is it that got you through that? And then I have a follow-up question to that.
So that's a mindset issue, right? You know what I mean? Two people can be in the same circumstance, and the mindset will be the difference in how they respond to it. I am a big Joseph Campbell monomyth hero's journey person, really big. And whenever I'm talking to somebody else, I'm there to try to be a guide for them. But for me, I am the hero of my own story. You know what I mean? And I'm just not going out like that. It's just not happening. You know what I mean? Like if I'm in those situations, it's just because it's going to make my story that much better when I win. You know what I mean? Like, I don't look at it like somehow, oh my God, woe is me. It's just more like, okay, cool.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is going to be really dope when I actually.
I love that.
You know, this is going to be really, really dope when I get that soccer team. You know what I mean?
Are you not thinking of that back when you were waiting tables? Come on.
No, I'm not.
Right. But I understand.
Back there. What's up, Jack? What's up, brother? What's up?
All right. You know some people here. Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Beautiful. Okay. So this is really fascinating to me that even in this position, you are kind of writing your narrative and you're looking at the hardship as the thing that's going to make the victory that much sweeter. That's incredible, like mastery of your mind and self-awareness and you're thinking those things. And look, again, I'm a visual guy. I love cinema, right? So not that this is what you're doing, but I can visualize a young man like sweeping the floors or wiping down the tables. But in his mind, he's like, I'm capable and I'm destined to be great. And there's a lot more for this or for this person in this narrative. Is that what you think about?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I saw myself as a programmer, and then I have a whole chapter about this in the book about reinvention, but basically it is, if you want to become something, you have to basically believe that you are that thing. And it's really important to not qualify that. So to not say I am an aspiring this, you know what I mean? Because then that's what you are. You're an aspiring that. You just need to be that. And then you need to make your environment resonate with that belief. So what I ended up having to do was go to all these different, it was totally cool that I waited tables. I could wait tables and still be a programmer at the same time. But I couldn't just wait tables. So I had to start going to user group meetings where a bunch of other programmers were and hanging out with programmers, because that's what programmers would do.
I see.
Right. So, and also programmers would, at the end of the day, they would go home and they would hack for another 2 hours, because that's what programmers do. So I had to live that. Right. And yes, I was not thinking, dude, the soccer thing was mind blowing. I never thought that would happen. My mind was completely focused on, I'm going to be a professional programmer and get paid for it. That was right. You know what I mean? It took 8 months to realize that externally, but internally, I was there.
I love that. I love what you're saying here. I'm eating this stuff up. So let me just kind of restate what you just said there. So first, you have to believe that you're capable of doing something, and saying I want to be that, like you aspire to be, is not good enough. You just are. And then you said you have to align your environment to match who you see yourself as becoming, or who you are. So you're the programmer, and programmers aren't wiping down tables. They hang out with other geeky programmers.
Yeah.
Now, not to get into this part, but this is a tangent here, but you are not built like a programmer. You don't look and act like a programmer. So this is quite interesting. So you're into this other world, programmers, and then externally, you're just waiting for that to catch up with the reality that's already in your mind.
Yeah.
That's some powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you see yourself winning the race. You're just waiting for the race, for the gun to go off, and for you to be across the finish line, because you already see yourself there. Now, it took a while to get there, but you did it.
Yeah. And I'm not the only one. This is the story.
Yes.
Right. How many humans have done this very same thing? This is our power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is our power. We just got to hold it in our mind's eye, and then actually move in accordance with it.
Okay.
We have to move in accordance with it. That's the trick.
So I'm going to put you on the spot, if you don't mind. I'm going to ask you, what is the framework? What is the framework? Your whatever how many steps process.
Yeah.
Here I am. I'm a young person, or maybe I'm not so young. I'm doing something I do not love, and I want to escape this thing. Can you break it down for us just the way you've done it before? What I need to do to set my mind right and the steps that I need to take to get to a place where I want to be.
Yeah. So you have to start with an idea,
Okay.
and then you have to believe the idea.
Okay, this is where most people fall.
You have
I can't do it. I'm gonna inhabit some of the people that are watching right now. All 500 people on YouTube and
Yeah.
20 plus people on the pro group. But I can't. It's not for people like me. The country I'm in, or my parents. I didn't get enough love. I got too much love. I got too much attention. I didn't get enough attention. Whatever it was, I just can't.
Yeah. And so it is.
All right.
I mean, I can't,
Yeah, I know. I agree.
yeah, I can't overcome the narrative you're telling yourself. You are the most powerful, even if you don't think you are. So if you don't understand that that thing you're telling yourself is what will be, like there's nothing I as an external person can do about this. I can't change that for you. I can only tell you you're the most powerful person in your world, without a doubt. And whatever you're telling yourself is exactly what it is. Exactly what you're going to be. So if someone is saying, I hear you, but if that's where they are, then, and so it is. Sometimes the most important thing is to just put it back to the person. You know what I mean? Like not try to struggle with them, but just sort of like let them say all that stuff and then say, you know what, you're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And then where do we go from there? Because it's like then they realize, oh, you mean you're not going to like try to like convince me of something different? No, I'm not going to convince you of anything different. I can't. You're the boss.
Right.
The boss. You must like this. You must really.
No, I don't like this, Marcus. I don't like this at all.
No. You do. Keep saying it. You do. and that's it. Look, I mean, time after time, if you ask anyone who's had a major shift in their life, they'll tell you like either I hit a bottom and I knew this was it, or I heard something and I was finally ready to hear it.
Yeah.
In a way that it would resonate. But it's never really about the external thing. It's always about the person's readiness, like when they're ready, and that's kind of the thing. You know what I mean? But that's okay. That's the other thing. That's okay. These are all, that's also why I like the hero's journey. The hero's journey is not perfect, right? The beginning of the hero's journey is the guide says, hey, I want to show you something, like something really incredible. And the hero refuses. That's the first thing, is the refusal of the call.
Right.
So it's part of it. Like, that's why, like, I don't want to demonize it. I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to say this person is less than. You're still a hero, even if you refuse the call. You'll eventually answer it. You know what I mean? Like, if it is to be, you are eventually going to answer the call.
Yeah. So for the uninitiated, what Marcus is referring to is called the hero's journey, or the monomyth, the hero with 1,000 faces, and it's written by Joseph Campbell. It's a concept that he popularized many years ago. Perhaps his most famous student is George Lucas. And if you map the story of Star Wars, there's a call to adventure, and there's always the refusal of the call. And I think what Marcus is talking about right now is you want to be this thing, and there are people all around you. There are books and videos and people like Marcus who are saying, are you ready for the next step? And you say, no, I don't believe that's ready. And that's just part of the arc, the struggle. Some people take a lot longer to jump on the starship and go into outer space and learn the Force. And some people just take a really, really long time to get there. But eventually you'll get there, right?
Yes. Eventually you'll get your journey.
Yeah.
If I'm the guide, I'm not supposed to try to like shake you into it. I'm just supposed to be there when you're ready. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you now recently become aware of this story structure, you'll notice next time you watch a movie, it's almost always the way. There's some reason why they changed their mind, and Marcus is like, I can't find that reason for you. You're going to find it yourself. Something that I like to tell people too is that if you do think of your life as a story, The beginning of your story was written, and up until a certain point, it was kind of set in place. How it ends is entirely up to you. Like, we can't control who we were born to, what we look like, how tall or short we are, with the skin color that we were born with, and even the city in which we grew up in. But the minute that you have agency over your life, the ability to say, like, I want to do this and I can manifest that into becoming, that's the point in which your story is now penned by you. And some of us feel like we're in this place, and people don't like to hear this, but they play the role of the victim. Like, I have no choice. This is it. So you're not ready to write that chapter just yet. But you ultimately get to determine who you are and who you become. Okay, now, Rachel Black had this wonderful question, which was, Marcus sounds crazy resilient. So she's like, what inspires him? Now, you guys may or may not know this about Marcus, but despite this wonderful kind of maybe like rags to riches story of overcoming some seemingly impossible odds, you actually had a bout of depression in 2017. So I think her question maps to that, and I would love for you to share part of that story in your arc.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, the connection to resilience is purpose. You know, and you can go down a really dark hole, and that's okay. You know, we are resilient. The human body, I mean, you know, is a very resilient thing. And so ultimately the question is your purpose big enough? You know, is your purpose, you know, great enough? My children, I was so lucky to be the dad of my two boys who are now 21 and 19. But they have saved my life so many times over the last 20 years, you know, because they are largely my purpose. And it's like, even when I wanted to like really give up and just feel like it would be just a lot easier to do that, it just really wasn't an option, you know. I had to do things for them, so I was very fortunate that I had this like built-in purpose. But you know, I would say it doesn't have to be children. You know, there's so many things you can have as a purpose for living and for striving and for not giving up. Purpose is fuel. You know what I mean? It's like super fuel.
Mm-hmm.
And really helps you get through really difficult times.
Mm. I think having something else to live for besides yourself is really important. Not always necessary, but really important. And I noticed the transformation that I had on my own journey when my sons were born. And I was thinking, whatever I used to say, if I don't live that, then that's what really these kids will see of me. And I try my best to set an example for them on how to live, not tell them what to do. So you watch dad, and children are great observers of these things. And if it's not in alignment with the things that I say, what I do and say, then you're sending them mixed signals, and they can see the truth pretty quickly.
Yes.
Okay. So, Rachel, do you have a follow up question before I call on Andrew to ask his question? Are you good with that?
That'd be great.
No?
Yeah, yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's good to see you. Okay. All right. So, let's see here. You also mentioned um, having some therapy work done in 2018 to deal with some deep seated trauma.
Yeah.
And you talk about self sabotaging, and people don't realize this as and I know you're familiar with these concepts, everybody, where you see somebody who has everything that they need to be successful, the talent, the brains, everything, but for some reason they just keep sabotaging their own success. They show up late to a meeting, and the characters, since we're talking about a lot of stories, I think the character Don Draper in Mad Men, that series on AMC,
Good one.
he was fantastic at doing this. This guy was riding to the top, and then he got the biggest deal ever, and then he would just leave and not tell anybody. So can you shed some light on that?
Yeah. You know, I think that trauma is a trauma is always there, always happening, and really no human being escapes it. I think we're lucky to live in this era where we have a much better understanding and respect of it. You know, I think people in past generations didn't really understand that things that happened to you when you were small, you know, if they aren't
Right.
properly dealt with, can, you know, have a huge impact on how you show up in the world for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really lucky. And then I think also within one's life, if you're living in this time where you're lucky enough for trauma to be something that's better understood, you don't really pay attention to trauma when you're young, right? You know, you're kind of just like muscling through things and hormones, and you know, I'm 44, right? So I mean, uh, you know, when you talk about the depression and the therapy, like I probably was like depressed before that, you know, but I was just like self-medicating because I just didn't, you know, I wasn't mature enough. You know, once I hit 40, I've really just, I can't really explain it, but like just all this self-awareness just started to settle in, and really more of a curiosity than anything, where I would look at my tendencies, like before I would do something really stupid, I would like look at it and I would just be like, so interesting that I want to do that thing. You know, whether I chose to do it or not, I would just start looking at it and just be curious about like, why do I want to do that? It's really interesting. Like, why do I want to do that? You know, and eventually, you know, I just started hitting these bottoms, which were just they were self-determined bottoms. Like I probably could have kept going drinking. I've been sober for 19 months, but like, you know, I probably could have just kept on going drinking. I probably just could have kept on going without therapy. I probably could have kept on going without meditating. It's just like, just sucks. Just, you know what I mean? Like I'm just like just miserable, you know, and like I'm miserable with like everything in the world. You know, I got like great wife, great kids, cool businesses, fun stuff. You know, like both my parents are alive. Like, what am I complaining about? But like, still, like things weren't right, and it was all this internal stuff. You know what I mean? And then I started realizing, oh yeah, there was that thing that happened to me. You know what I mean? Like happened to me, and nobody ever asked me if I was okay. You know what I mean? And
have you shared what this trauma is or was?
I mean, there's a bunch of different stuff, but you know, I mean, so one of the things I like decided when I decided like I was gonna like be healthy was that for the most part, as long as it didn't hurt someone else, I'm totally cool with being an open book. There's some things I won't talk about because they would hurt other people, and that's just not okay. But like, you know, in terms of like childhood stuff, no, I had to explain to some friends of mine the other day. You know, we were just talking about like racism stuff, and I was just like, you know, I was a 10-year-old kid at my friend's house in Canarsie. You know, maybe the first time that like a grown man like called me the N-word and like yelled it at me and like scared me to death, and like I had to like run to my friend's house, and like I still like when I bring it up, even though I've been through therapy, like I still can like replay it. You know what I mean? You know, it's not the only thing, but there are things like that. You know what I mean? You know, there are things like that happen, that happen to you. Like you didn't do anything, and it just sort of happened to you, and then it's like on you to like you have to like go through the forgiveness, and you have to break the cycle of like, you know, that trauma and not like relive it or not like play it out on somebody else. But those are mature things. You know what I mean? Like before you get there, you're likely to like pass the trauma on in some really unfortunate way to somebody else. It's just like, you know, it's the human condition. So, you know, again, I feel like we're very fortunate to be living in this time where, as difficult as things are, thank God we respect mental health, and thank God we, you know, we've demystified therapy, and you know, it's just a better time. It's a time where people can actually be healthy. Like unbelievable, you know?
Right. And I appreciate you doing that because there's a couple things. I mean, if you look at Marcus and how he's built, and he seems like he's very fit, as what I can perceive to be as a powerful athletic man who's got a black belt in Aikido, and I think you're doing BJJ as well. That for you as a healthy man to be able to talk about things like depression and therapy, I want to be a champion for that because I want this to be the normal and not to be abnormal. So that's why I went there. Okay, yeah. So I think we're going to take an opportunity here to bring on somebody else. Andrew, Andrew, you have a question.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, Andrew?
Far away, man.
You know, on the related topic of like discipline and things like that, what is something we can do every day to work towards being a great entrepreneur?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I mean, the answer is, show up and do your work every day, right? So there's nothing really prescribed. I gave you the 8 different concepts. If you're working on a business, you may not get to all of them every single day, but over the course of 2 weeks, I bet you'll end up touching every aspect of them, right? You know what I mean? You'll be fine tuning what your purpose is in business. You'll go through your financials, you'll do your bookkeeping, you'll run through your processes and make sure that you've got good processes, or, check your insurance. You'll be looking at the market, doing competitive analysis. That's your growth aspect. You think about your product. I think at the end of the day, you're going to touch all of the aspects of your business, and the only way you can get to all of them is to show up every day and work on your business every single day. So it's just cycles. It's like anything else. It's like, how did I become a black belt in Hapkido? I kept going to class. You know what I mean? Like that, there literally is no other thing more important than showing up to class 2 to 3 times a week to becoming a black belt. Nothing. Because if you don't show up, forget it. You can't do the rolls. You can't do the kicks. You can't do the, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't show up, you can't do any of it. So the best way to be a great entrepreneur is to just keep doing it every single day. Show up, work on your business every single day.
Perfect. Okay, I know you are familiar with Jack, so I'm going to ask this question for him. I know you guys can have a private conversation after this based on your reaction to seeing his face, but he wanted to ask you, what parallels do you see in sports and athletics to business? Because you're an investor in Major League Soccer team in Nashville. So real quick, what do you see there?
Yeah, okay, that's a fantastic question. So that's a fantastic question, because I see martial arts and intermittent fasting and working out every day as part of what makes me better than my competition in business. So I see business as a sport. I see the human body as being a machine that will perform at anything you ask it to do at the level that you prepare it to do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so the reality is that if you are in the free market, you are competing. End of story. Anyone who says they're in a business and they're not competing is completely delusional. Even if you're competing with apathy or someone not caring enough about this thing to spend money on it, you're competing, right? So to me, I work out so that when I sit here and do this, I'm clear-headed. I've got the right energy. I'm feeling good. My dopamine is firing off. You know what I mean? And I can deliver the best possible presentation for you. If I was not working out, you'd be able to tell. You know what I mean? It'd be sluggish. You know what I mean? I wouldn't feel powerful. So I think, look, I see business as a sport. I think if you want to be great at it, you should take care of yourself. You should sleep well. You should eat well. You should work out. You should do whatever mindfulness practice you can do simply so that you can better control the thoughts as they come in and out of your head. And then you have to practice. Back to Andrew's question, how do you be a great entrepreneur? How do you be a great soccer player? Well, you show up to practice all the time, right? You know what I mean? You kick 1,000, goal kicks. You know what I mean? That's how you get good at that one thing, right? So, you send 1,000 sales emails. That's how you get good at that one thing, right?
Fantastic. Okay, we have one other person here that's going to ask a question. It's Riyadh. Riyadh, are you ready? Your mic's hot.
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, fire away.
Perfect. I'm going to try to go back and take this discussion and challenge the state of mind that you guys have been discussing for the last few minutes, which is being in the right place at the right time is a concept we cannot totally factor out. So do you imagine becoming who you are today if you didn't land that job? And if not, how would you elevate your chances?
So the whole being at the right place at the right time thing is a hindsight thing that you don't have any control over. And so I basically see it as a total waste of time. Now, having said that, generally speaking, you don't want to be in a market where the thing you're trying to do is impossible. Okay? You don't want to do that. So, you need to be in a place where it's possible to get a technology job, meaning there have to be technology companies there hiring people. Okay. So there are some aspects of right place, right time that are just market analysis, right? But in terms of like me knowing that I was waiting tables on the Frist family that actually happened to be related to the owner of HealthStream, which is the company that I got my job at, and probably because I did a good job waiting tables on them, that somehow factored into me getting that first job. I had no idea. But I'll tell you this, I waited on every table like they mattered. I didn't do it so that somebody would say something cool behind the scenes that I'd end up getting a job. I didn't do it for that reason, but you never know what the moment's going to be. So like, it's your job to show up in every moment that you can, ready to give your absolute best performance. I do think people don't know how much of the right time stuff they can actually control. You know what I mean? Simply by showing up, being focused, and executing well. Like a lot of times people will say, oh, well, if this hadn't happened, like this hadn't happened. Yeah, but the main ingredient was you. You know what I mean? And how much you brought it. And I'll tell you why I kind of believe this. Because over the last 20 years, I haven't done this one time. I'm now going on like 5 times doing this thing now. Like I'm about to do something else really big right now. And it's not related to the other things that I've done. You know what I'm saying? And someone might look and say, oh, okay, this, but look, let me just tell you right now, like nobody, when I was at Emma, nobody in Nashville knew who I was. Nobody would have looked and been like, oh, that's going to be the guy that's going to help figure out how to, launch the first tech accelerator in the Southeast, or that's the guy who's going to figure out how to partner with some people and bring professional soccer to Nashville. Nobody was going to say that about that guy. You know what I mean? And they're not even related things. So that's why you really wouldn't say it. Nobody was going to say this computer programmer guy was going to do that thing. Like you are more of an X factor than you know. This is why I just kind of keep going back to the hero's journey. It's like, you got to really, don't underestimate the power of the mind. It's pretty powerful. When people want to lean in a negative direction, it's like you just give negative power. And and that is your power. It is your power to do that. So I will, you know what I mean?
Yeah, whatever you're doing, Marcus, whatever you're eating and however you're practicing, I like your energy. It's like really good vibes right now. Because usually at this point, when somebody asks me that question, I snap. I'm like, all right, let me set you straight. So I'm going to play my old classic role here. All right, to show you the contrast between somebody who takes good care of their body, their mind, their spirit, and their soul, and some degenerate like myself. So here we go. Riyadh, generally speaking, I'm not saying you specifically, but generally speaking, when somebody asks that question about, well, you got to be at the right place at the right time, generally speaking, what they're trying to do is attribute success to luck, which is completely out of your control. And that's a theme that Marcus was talking about, is what's in your control and what's out of your control. And you have to be wise enough to say the weather's out of your control. This virus that's spreading is out of your control. What happens in the marketplace, generally speaking, unless you're a quadrillionaire or whatever, is out of your control. But everything else that is in your domain and what you have agency over is in your control. And being at the right place at the right time, in front of the right person, is more the byproduct of your preparation than it is just luck. From the outsider, it's going to look like luck. And allow me to take some liberties with Marcus's story, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong here. But while he's waiting tables, as the tech industry is just starting to take root, especially of all places like Nashville, he had to prepare, 6, 7, 8 months of learning coding, so that when that opportunity appeared, he would be ready to answer the call. You see, when the herald comes and says, Marcus, are you ready to go on this journey with me? His bags were packed. He already wrote his goodbye notes, and he was ready to go. And I just, one of these things, and I have a strong allergic reaction to, is you have to take ownership, man. At some point in your life, when you're ready, you got to just take ownership and say, I'm going to be ready. And you can see that most successful people, not all, when that call came, They were on it. Or they found the calling themselves. And they said, you know what? I'm just going to pack my bags. There's no calling. I'm just going to go out into the unknown world. And I'm just going to explore something. And who knows if anybody even needs it. So if he doesn't pick up the books, if he doesn't start teaching himself, if he quits halfway through, when that job opening is there, he tries to apply, he's not qualified. And it's just like that. So if anything today, if you guys can walk away with something from either one of us, is to walk away with this message of hope and to feel empowered to control or take control of the things that you have agency over, and just take that step sooner than later, hopefully, because it gets a lot harder later.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm almost out of time with you, Marcus, but you talked about this briefly, and I think it's a good way for us to kind of wrap this up, okay? Which is, you mentioned before about content creation, and that's kind of the space that we're in, so I'm like, my ears perked up. Like, right? Why double down on content creation as a tech entrepreneur, as an investor? Like, that seems a little odd for somebody of your stature. Tell us about what content creation means for you and why you're doubling down on it.
So I always try to frame up for people that technology has moved so fast that we don't really appreciate what we have, right? I was a friend of mine just said on Instagram, it was the 13th anniversary of this like event that we threw in Nashville called Bar Camp Nashville, where it was like the first time we brought like the digital community together. 13-year anniversary. And I had to remind like a couple of people, you realize we threw that event and the iPhone had only been around for 2 months. The iPhone is not 15 years old, y'all. Okay? So like, why create content? Because this is unbelievable. Like, are you kidding me? Have you seen the studio that Chris is building? Impossible 15 years ago. You could have never, ever, ever done that. You just couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. I have my own show Monday through Friday, 12 Central. Like, the reason why my camera and my mic look good is because like I just got an itty bitty studio. I don't have a Futur studio, right? But like this is unbelievable. I pay $60 for AT&T fiber and I get a gig up and down and I can broadcast to the world. Are you kidding me? This is unbelievable. Like, of course you should do it. Of course you should do it. Like, this is asset creation. This is a way to use your time to create an asset that like it's not going to go down in value. You're creating it out of thin air. This is alchemy that you know what we're doing here. Like, just if you're here, just look at what the Futur is doing. Like, this is really going to happen. There's really going to be 1 billion people like educated on this platform. And like, that's incredible. And there's no way the amount of money invested like is relative to that impact. There's just no way. So I just feel like we have these incredible tools and we don't value it, and we're spending so much time consuming and not enough time creating on it. And creating content, if nothing else, is just a wonderful practice to appreciate the capabilities that the internet has enabled for us. And you can change people's lives with this stuff. You know, like, you can change people's lives with this. And what better thing to do in the middle of a global pandemic? Like, help another person, right? Through a piece of content, through a podcast, through a video, through a tweet even. I mean, goodness gracious, I just struggle to think of a better thing to do right now than like put out incredible content.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. Okay, Jonah is not totally on the edit today because, as you may have noticed, I've been wiping my face a couple of times. Jonah, thank you very much. It's if you guys are noticing, there's this natural sheen. It's not because I'm hot and sweaty where I'm at, because I've turned off the AC for this call. It's like this new foundation glow that they've made for men. No, I'm super sweaty right now, so this episode is hot, literally and figuratively. You're getting a ton of love in the chat there, Marcus. So after the show is over, you may want to peruse what they're saying to you on YouTube. Some people are saying this is our best live stream ever, and I want to thank you for bringing it to straight fire. It's not realistic, ladies and gentlemen, that you could sit through Marcus's presentation and absorb all that. That's just too much. So I'm gonna highly recommend you guys go out and pick up his book. It's called what is it called again?
Create and Orchestrate. I don't even I'm a bad salesperson. Hold on.
Yeah, hold up the book, please, and tell people where they can get it.
Create and Orchestrate. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, paperback, and I'm also selling signed copies at creativepower.co. So yeah, a Shopify store, because yeah, the internet's incredible, and you can like set up your own store and do your own thing. Like, y'all, wake up. Like, you can do anything. I published this book. No publisher was gonna pay me to do this. I just did it myself. Like, you can do anything you want. It's like the world's incredible. Seriously.
You know what? I know you're 44, but you speak like a 22-year-old. I love it. Love the energy. I love that you're pushing things and you're just finding boundaries, and you're still on your 6th venture, and who knows what else is in store for you. So thank you very much for being on the show. I also want to thank everybody, all 512 of you that are here in the live stream, and especially my Futur fam. A little over 20 people made it through the live stream. I hope you guys enjoy this. Okay, so I'm going to cut to the slide now. His name is Marcus Whitney, and you guys can reach out to him on Twitter at Marcus Whitney. Follow him there and on other social media channels. You can go to marcuswhitney.com and find out everything else about him and the different things that he's doing. Jonah, you got the music ready? Did I give you enough time to get ready for this? Okay, here we go, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. We'll see you around on the other side. And also check out Marcus on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel. He's done TED Talks and all that stuff. Thank you, everybody, for being part of our 1 billion mission to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love. Hashtag 1B-1. Thank you very much, everybody. That's it for me. I'm out of here. Peace.
I blasted my ears.
Oh my God, Jonah, the timing and the volume on that. Are we still live?
Unfortunately.